Amazon has not had the best PR for the way it treats its workers over the past year or so. They've tried to ward off a bit of that by doing things like raising wages to $15 an hour. But when you do that and then you crush the attempt in Bessemer to unionize, I would say that that's at best a wash in terms of your relationship with your workers. Now it turns out it's worse than we thought, not just in the daily working environment for the workers, which we're gonna get into some of that, but their approach to what sort of workers they want, and maybe more importantly, how long they want them for. There's this amazing work that's been done, fascinating, about how disposable they consider their workers to be. So let's get into some of this reporting that the New York Times put together. From July to October 2020 alone, so just a brief portion of last year, they hired 350,000 new workers, more than the population of St. Louis. Many recruits hired through computer screening with little conversation or vetting lasted just days or weeks. So they would hire these people in, hundreds of thousands of people, and then within just days and weeks, in an economic downturn where people desperately need this work, people moved on. They couldn't take it. They just could not keep up with the insane standards of productivity that Amazon expects. But this isn't just about the pandemic. Even before it, Amazon was losing about 3% of its hourly associates every week, meaning the turnover among its workforce was roughly 150% a year. When you're losing more than 10% of your workforce every month, month after month after month, that should be some indication that maybe you're doing something wrong when it comes to the way you treat your workers. But it's not that they don't know that. They know that, they just don't care. And we're gonna get into some of that information a little bit, but I wanted, Vivian, I wanted to get your reaction to a bit of this.
I mean, like you just said, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing, and we're not surprised. And I like that you mentioned before the pandemic, these numbers were existing because there has been a lot of talk about people on unemployment, not wanting to work, and that's the reason they're turning down jobs, et cetera, which in some cases is true because they don't want to be exploited. I mean, if you can make a decent living somewhere where you're proud of what you're doing and you're not doing backbreaking work for minimum wage, why would you do that job if you can stand unemployment? So that's one side thing, but this has been happening for a decade now, whenever Amazon started taking off, and the pandemic just gave them more money and they needed more employees. It's not surprising. I mean, we know that capitalism is based on the exploitation of the workforce. So if we're gonna continue to let capitalism run unfettered, then we're gonna continue to have this problem.
Yeah, and I would say in this case, this is almost like, this is more efficient exploitation than I think I've seen before, because it really comes in all forms. Like, sure, they're upping the pay or whatever, but your actual experience of work is terrible. The danger, which we're gonna get to, that you're exposed to, is terrible, and they don't even want to keep you around for reasons we will get to, philosophical reasons we'll get to in just a little bit. But first of all, let's focus a bit on the pandemic. So one of the many potential explanations for why the turnover is so high. What do you have to do to get 3% of your workforce every week to abandon you? Well, back during the pandemic, workers were told to take as much paid time off as they needed, then hit with mandatory overtime. When Amazon offered employees flexible personal leaves, the system handling them jammed, issuing a blizzard of job abandonment notices to workers and sending staff scrambling to save them, according to human resources and warehouse employees. So no, we're like totally understanding of your need for wellness and like, it's okay to not be okay. Oh, by the way, you're gonna be fired because we think that you're not okay. Right. And it's totally a mistake. It's not intentional. We just, for some reason, don't have enough people to actually adjudicate what this computer is doing to you. And then, of course, there's the actual sickness. So the company didn't tell its workers at one New York City warehouse, JFK 8, or other warehouses, the number of COVID-19 cases that have been found there. They would say sometimes that individuals had contracted it, but they wouldn't say how many. It could be 1, it could be 20, it could be far more. Amazon did say that it was publicly disclosing confirmed cases to health officials, but New York City records don't show any evidence of that. So they're being very vague to their workers, making it so they have no idea how much danger they're actually in. They say they're coordinating with the city, but there's no evidence that they actually do that. One warehouse had at least 700 confirmed cases between March 2020 and March 2021. And that's the ones who were actually able to be tested. Because to be tested, you need to have tests, which back in March, we didn't really. It took a while to spool that up. And you also have to have like 5 contiguous minutes off work to go get tested. And so 700 is what they found at one warehouse. God only knows how much it is. God only knows how many people died as a result of this and this lax approach to your workers' safety.
It's really upsetting because if you think back to when we first started learning about coronavirus, we didn't know a lot about it, and we were wiping down our cardboard boxes, and so many of us had the luxury of staying home and feeling safe in our bubble. Meanwhile, these Amazon workers are touching those boxes from international shipping, most of them from China as well, and delivering them to our doorstep. So they should have been given extra care, extra time, whatever's necessary. And you said contiguous 5 minutes. The lines for testing were hours long. Yeah. So you needed a half a day to go get tested. And this is not the only company that has hit these employees like, oh, take the time off. Supermarkets were doing it. Uber was doing it. Take the time off if you're sick, and then they get punished. And I think we have been with workers' rights for so long that we don't know what it's like without them. And we're starting to get a taste of it.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.